Hi, my YouTube channel has recently been reinstated. It was censored during the COVID and my videos warning people of the dangers of mRNA experimental vaccines were considered medical misinformation, whereas now it is actually medical fact. So that aside, today I'm focusing on my Twitter. Sorry, it's not Twitter anymore, is it? It's X. And I wrote this post about the war. You know, apparently we're going to war with Russia. As Craig Murray here said on his post, which I will just show you briefly now. Russia is at war with Britain, and US is no longer a reliable ally, UK advisor says. And as Craig Murray says, this absolutely certifiable lunatic neocon warmonger who says we are at war with Russia is one of the authors of Starmer's Strategic Defence Review, on the basis of which is reorienting the British economy entirely towards weapons production. So I've said, get lost, we're not going to war with Russia on behalf of Nazis and the evil corporations you sold out to, and not for the evil Zionist Nazi king either. None of you have done anything for we the people, but have systematically destroyed our country while attacking us with economic terrorism. F off, bees, okay? You are not spilling our blood in your sick battles. We know you want this war to attack Palestinian support in UK and to silence Europe while Israel kills every Palestinian. No, the hate for all you genocidal effers. This planet needs help, not more effing bombs. And we do need to understand that once this war starts, you are looking at martial law, and you are looking at rations, and you are looking at very likely removal and killing of our pets. Okay? You need to understand, people, what war with Russia will entail, because we're talking about a full-on hot war with a nuclear power. It is not going to be limited to Ukraine. Now, after I had written this, another post came up on X, which I responded to, and I wrote a very, very, very long piece. Well, not very, very, very long, but it was a lot. It was a longer piece, and I paid to subscribe to X specifically to be able to write longer posts, okay? And not on anywhere will you find this post, because the moment that I wrote it and I it was on, and then I edited it, and then I posted the edit and I viewed the edit, and then when I went back onto X and I responded to what's his name now? Well, I responded to Patrick Henningsen, and I asked him to check my post. I said, thank you. Check the latest item on my profile. X has clearly limited views on my post, and I don't need to wonder why. So I went to check my profile to make sure that the post was actually there, that I'd just written, and it was gone. And when I started searching for it, next minute, there was just a big X on the screen, and I was locked out. Now, that is the second time that has happened to me on X, where I've spent time and trouble to write and inform the British public of exactly what is going on here, and really what we need to do, what needs to be done now. And instantly, my post is deleted. And it isn't like I've got a massive reach. I think I've got, what, a couple of, 658 followers. So, you know, it isn't like I'm a major person in Britain or I have any social standing even. You know, I'm a carer, a person-centred counsellor and carer. Basically, nobody, really. But for some reason, I'm considered such a threat that X immediately deletes my posts as I've written them. And I find that level of censorship deeply disturbing when we are allegedly, according to Starmer, on the brink of war with Russia. Russia, who has never done a single thing against this country. That's the fact of it. So in the post, so I'm going to tell you now what I wrote in that post. I said, again, we're not going to war with Russia. I said, we don't trust you, Keir Starmer. We don't trust any of you. We don't trust British Parliament. Because the bulk of MPs on both sides of the House stood up and supported genocide. They lied in Parliament repeatedly. They cited Israel's lies about beheaded babies, babies cooked in an oven, rapes, 1,000, nearly 2,000 Israelis murdered by savages, okay? Savages, beasts. And while they were saying all of this, in that same instance, they were there bombing and terrorising the whole of Gaza. And meanwhile, British Parliament is there saying, yes, Israel does have that right to defend themselves, beheaded babies, rapes, blah, blah, blah. All of them proved to be a pack of lies. There were no beheaded babies on October the 7th, committed by Hamas. There were no rapes. Israeli police have confirmed that there were no reported rapes. Okay? And they've even forensically examined the dead and have found no evidence of rape on any of them either. So then it comes to the killing of Israelis. We know for a fact that Israel had decided on October the 7th to extend the Hannibal Directive onto Israeli civilians. And we do have to note here that the civilians we're talking about are mostly left-wing Israelis that live in the kibbutzes. They generally support socialism, okay? We know very well that Zionists hate anything to do with socialism, don't we? They don't like human rights. They don't like international law. So it seems that Israel was prepared to sacrifice the Israelis it doesn't really like on that day. And they opened fire on the Hamas, who were trying to take hostages, as Israeli witnesses on the day have said that many people got caught in the crossfire. So Israelis died, I think, a very few directly through Hamas, through possible retaliation, but most of them were killed by Israel. That's the fact of it. They were killed by the IDF. The IDF took their tanks and aimed their tanks directly into the kibbutzes' households and shot their weapons into those kibbutzes and blew them up and incinerated a baby and a child and killed all the people in there, including the Hamas, who were holding some of the people in there as hostages. And then they went to the car park where many Israelis had fled from the music festival to their cars, to escape. Some of them with Hamas members who were trying to hold them hostages. So, you know, rather than wait to find out which is the hostage, which car's got Hamas in or whatever, they just torched all the cars and blamed it on Hamas. Those images were shown all over BBC News, all over our newspapers, telling us, look at this, look at these cars, look at this pile of charred bodies. This is what Hamas has done, okay? They even said at one point that the bodies were all Israeli children that Hamas had torched. And no, Hamas has not got the military capability to do that. I knew that straight away, as did many other people seeing those images. We knew straight away that Hamas does not have that power to commit that mass kind of carnage. And then, yes, it transpires that no, all of that, the cars torched, everything was all done by Israeli military using Hellfire missiles. And so it turns out that actually the bulk of Israelis killed on October the 7th were killed by the IDF. And the very fact that Hamas nonetheless managed to take 200 hostages on that day, it seems more like they were permitted to take those hostages because, you know, how did any of them get back into Gaza? They really had no weapons. So how did they all get back into Gaza? Yeah. So myself and many others, according to the evidence, we lawfully strongly suspect that Israel, through infiltration into top ranks of Hamas, which, let's face it, Israel created and has been funding through Qatar to the tune of billions for decades. This is a fact, okay? You've got to hold on to the facts, people, because let's face it, these same people who've been lying to us now and deleting the facts right down to having control of our social media and instantly deleting what we write, okay? Think about that. So according to the evidence, Israel knew about this attack, at least knew about it or had some kind of direct control within it. I'm not saying it's got complete control of Hamas, because the bulk of Hamas have nothing to do with Israeli Mossad, okay? And are not aware of any involvement that they are involved. So this attack was to justify vengeance, and the vengeance was needed to take Gaza, reclaim that territory as far as they're concerned, when it was never theirs in the first place, but according to them, we're reclaiming Gaza. And the prize, the main prize, is trillions of tons of gas and oil offshore from Gaza. Okay, it's Gaza's gas and oil, and they want it. And they also want the land for their racist, hateful immigrants that they keep bringing into the country, mostly from Eastern Europe, I think. So that is what we are looking at. Okay, basically a pre-known, pre-planned event that then gives Israel justification. And part of that justification was the whole of the Western media repeating these lies. Nobody investigated the lies. Nobody bothered to check that they were true. They were all just reported as fact. So now we know that they are lies, absolutely 100% for sure. So that means that for over a year, and even up until very recently, British MPs, including our Prime Minister, have been standing in Parliament spouting a pack of lies to justify Israel's right to defend itself. Okay? Well, now let's come to Russia. We've got the Minsk Accord. Now, people need to understand that Russia Ukraine was always part of Russia, but it was considered a borderland, okay? And Russia actually created Ukraine as a buffer zone after World War II, and it was agreed that NATO would never be on that buffer zone, as Russia also agreed not to put weapons on that buffer zone. So, sorry, it's my dog. So, once Ukraine decided that it wanted to join the EU and join NATO as well, that is a threat against Russia. Now, Russia did not immediately respond, okay, when suddenly Ukraine's saying it wants to be part of NATO. And we have to look at the history of why the Ukrainian government suddenly decided to abandon the Minsk Accord and put the whole of its population and actually the whole of the world at risk of World War III. Okay? And Ukraine, the people of Ukraine, have been experiencing World War III, as indeed also have the people of Gaza. This is World War III. This is a war against sanity, against the law, against human rights. This is the Nazis coming back and saying, hey, we've got strong, we're gonna get everything back. We're gonna erase all the progress, the human social progress that was made after 1945. We're going to break all of the agreements. We're going to trash all of the laws. We're in control now. We've got the money. We've got the guns, because we live by Luciferian law of might equals right to do as we like. And obviously they like killing and shredding babies, okay? They're the ones that behead the babies. They're the ones that have done the rapes. Oh, not rapes, but also, what would you call it? Sadistic sexual sadism against the people that they have in captivity, who they are supposed to, by international law, treat humanely. But obviously, Zionists do not consider anybody except Zionist Jews to be human. So that's the government that we have supporting Ukraine, the war in Ukraine. So let's just have a quick look, shall we, at the war in Ukraine. And here we are. Official. Johnson forced Kiev to refuse Russian peace deal. Russia was ready to end the war if we took neutrality, Ukraine's former top negotiator confirmed. But Boris Johnson said, let's just fight, okay? Russia was ready to end the war, and in flew Boris Johnson to Kiev. And we all remember that, him rushing out of Parliament, rushing over to Kiev without consulting Parliament. No consultation with Parliament. So undemocratically abusing his powers of office to travel to another country and persuade that country to commit to war against a major nuclear power that Ukraine alone could never defeat. And after, what, displacing millions of Ukrainians, how many have been killed? We have no idea. The youth being dragged from their homes to die in trenches, in trench warfare. Okay, that is what this country has been supporting, as well as genocide in Gaza. Okay? And we need to understand that the very fact that Ukraine has a government right now that wants to join NATO, that actively broke the Minsk Accord, is because there was a coup. In 2014, Nazis who we know for a fact were funded and trained and armed by Western powers. And that includes NATO, that includes Britain, that includes Germany and France and Canada and also Israel, has a big hand in this pie, you see. So the Nazis probably formed about 10% of the whole of the Ukrainian population. The majority of the Ukrainian population did not want to join the EU. They did not want NATO. They wanted to stay independent with Russia as their defence should ever Europe come to attack them. Okay? Well, Europe did come to attack the people of Ukraine, and specifically to provoke war with Russia. And actually, provoking war deliberately is against international law. So therefore, all the countries that were a part of this are criminal. Now, as soon as they took power, these Nazis, who had been around in very small numbers since World War II, because they supported Hitler. These Nazi factions in Ukraine were the same factions that stood with Hitler during World War II. And their hero, Stefan Bandera, is a man who directly murdered 150,000 Jewish Ukrainians, stripped them of all their clothes and belongings, and marched them to death pits where they were all shot. And there is footage of it, and you can see it on Oliver Stone's film, Ukraine on Fire. Okay, and every British person now does need to watch that film. I will leave it in the links because, you know, you need to know exactly what's going on and why you are now being expected to fight with Russia. Okay, why our blood is now expected to be spilled on behalf of what? Nazis and Zionists and their New World Order and their Great Reset. Because yes, they would like to do to Europe exactly what they've done to Gaza. They would like to shut down the voice of reason and compassion and law and righteousness. They want to stamp it out like the devil would, obviously. Because, let's face it, the devil is basically a criminal. And they don't like law. And they don't like righteous people standing up to them with the law and saying, no, you've done wrong here. You see? So this is what I explained. This is what I explained in my post that X instantly deleted because it doesn't want me to inform the British people. Even though I'm just a little person, but with a little account, I've not got, you know, the main Twitter subscription. It's just the really cheapest one. And I got it only because it was on special offer. And only to give me the ability to inform people rather than being restricted to a couple of sentences here and there. And my time and my energy and my knowledge all just completely deleted. So, again, I ask the British people, why should we trust this government? A government that has done nothing but attack us. And it's not just this government, it's the governments before it. Every government from Blair onwards. Okay, the Tories and Labour all on at the same thing. It's okay for them to go and invade Iraq again on a pack of lies. It's okay for Israel to just go and bomb Iran, really, with no provocation, but just go and bomb Iran. That's fine. Israel can do that because Israel's defending itself. Well, you know, Russia, as I explained, has a right to reclaim the territories that it granted specifically to establish the Minsk Accord. Okay? And once that Minsk Accord is broken, then Russia does have that right to reclaim its territory and to defend and protect the 80% Russian-speaking people who were all being mercilessly and brutally and savagely attacked by Nazis. Now, in 2016, the battle was so great between the Ukraine military and the Nazi military that had formed the coup that 22,000 Ukrainian people in Donbass were killed by Nazis, not by Russia. Okay? So, Russia, this time, came in because we had Britain behind them, you've got the West behind them. They were using Ukraine as a proxy state to attack Russia. That much is clear. And Russian-speaking people within Ukraine, people who had lived there for centuries. We're not talking about, oh, they've all just moved in. You know, those people were indigenous. They're indigenous people to Ukraine. So all this idea that, oh, you know, yes, well, they're all the enemy, those people. Now, the only reason why Zelensky was voted in by a huge majority is because he promised that there was, you know, that he was going to keep this thing that, you know, there was going to be no law against speaking Russian. He was going to drop all of that. He was going to drop the NATO thing, okay? He was going to drop the EU thing. And then, bang, he gets in, does a complete U-turn, and bang, next minute, Russia's stepped in. Now, in light of, you know, Britain and America's invasion of Iraq on the pretext of suspected nuclear weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, right? They only suspected it. There was absolutely no evidence. And Dr. David Kelly confirmed categorically that there were no nuclear weapons in Iraq. He was a weapons inspector. He knew, because they know where nuclear weapons are kept, no matter how far deep they are, because they give off isotopes. Okay? It isn't a question of seeing them. They can detect them. And he knew there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And yet, what happened to David Kelly? Oh, bang, suddenly he's dead. The doctors, medics, the paramedics attending all said that this was not a suicide. We know that he was murdered. And along with, there was a Labour MP, Robin Cook, who suddenly, you know, was dead while out walking. Okay? Apparently, he fell and died. But he was very strongly speaking against the Iraq war. So, again, we had a pack of lies. And so, but that was okay, you see. That was okay for us to go into Iraq on the mere suspicion that they had weapons of mass destruction and were a threat to us, okay? But Russia does not have a right to go into the country that it gave, into the lands that it bequeathed, basically, as a buffer zone when the Minsk Accord was broken. You know? How does it make sense? How does it make sense? It's basically saying, I've got a right to punch you in the face, rape your wife, kill your children, steal everything that you've got, and if you lift a finger against me, you're a terrorist. That is what they are saying. Now, in this post, yes, I did go right out on the line, because look, I am prepared to sacrifice my life if that's what it takes to stop these evil monsters, because my love and care and compassion is with the children of this planet and of the life and all the creatures that live on this planet. And for the good, hard-working people, and I don't care what their politics are, I love them all. Okay? Because none of them are responsible for what is happening. You know? And so I called on the UK police and military to turn their powers within against the government, against this quisling, Zionist, Nazi-supporting government. On both sides of the house, arrest every single Zionist, because they are terrorists and they are now threatening not just Russia, not just Ukraine, but the whole of Europe, Britain and America with absolute terrorism. And as I say, you have no idea, British people, how bad it can get because you don't remember it. But our great-grandparents and grandparents lived it. They sacrificed their lives for human rights and international law. And the military and police and law and government of this country is established on strength of those human rights and international law. And the duty now of the UK military and police, in light of the law and in light of the facts and evidence and in light of the outright evil, blatant lies justifying genocide, your duty is to stand with the law and human rights and international law and the people, the democracy, the democratic electorate of Britain. Britain's children and Britain as a nation. The enemy is Keir Starmer. The enemy is David Lammy. The enemy is every single MP and minister in UK Parliament who are howling for World War III, who have been systematically supporting genocide, well, denying genocide while it is happening before our very eyes. I can tell you that I am disgusted with this country. I'm going to launch an official complaint against X. I will be writing to my MP. I suggest every single British person, you write to your MP today and you tell them in no uncertain terms why you don't support World War III. You do not want it. Okay? I mean, I wrote a letter to Parliament. I don't think I've got it up now. I wrote a letter to Parliament, to my MP, I think it was last year, about World War III. I'll leave you a link to that. I'll leave you a link to Macarati with words about why we need to get rid of every Zionist in Parliament because they are a quizzling entity serving foreign powers and they are attacking us. They have been attacking us through economic terrorism. Okay, they have destroyed this nation with their evil shenanigans and both of them working together to do it. So that is where we are at. Now, if you want World War III, like I say, you need to think about what it actually entails because, you know, I am talking about martial law here. And if you go into this letter from Parliament, there is a thing here about martial law, okay? The brutal reality of martial law, how it works and what happens. Confiscation of property. Depending on the situation, it is possible the authorities could forcibly remove you from your home to acquire the property for the government, confiscate or even destroy it without having to pay compensation. Legislation also allows for destroying animal or plant life belonging to a citizen without the need to compensate them. So I'll leave you that link there and think, look at your pets and think, are you ready to have your pets whisked away and killed and shot? Are you ready for soldiers coming into your home and taking whatever they like and doing whatever they like because there's no law, there's just tribunals, human rights, democracy suspended indefinitely? Is that what you are prepared to accept from this government who cannot even tolerate a post on X from an average, ordinary carer citizen? Okay? That is how weak and vulnerable they are, that they have to employ X and YouTube and Facebook to shut us down, to shut our mouths. And now Israel wants to shut the whole of Europe's mouth about its genocide because while this war happens, they will kill every single Palestinian they can get their evil hands on. Now, I have never stood against Israel as a state. I know that there are many, many good people in Israel. I know B'Tselem. I know Jewish Boys for Peace. I know the true Torah's Jews. I know the Armenian Christians that are there. I know the Israeli Jews that are there that do not support what is happening. and who refuse to join the IDF and who are ashamed and disgusted of what their country is doing in their name. And I support the two-state solution because I know that the Palestinian people, I know the forgiveness of Islam. I know that those people are not ISIS. They're not Al-Qaeda. They're not the terrorists that we know now. We know for sure, the evidence is in. CIA, Israel, MI6, they've all been training, funding, using these terrorists specifically to attack countries like Syria, where Israel wants to grab a third of the land. Or was it? No, it's 2/3 of Syria, Israel's grabbing. So why should we follow the tune of these warmongers? Isn't it better that if we're going to die at the hands of Russia, not by our choice, but by the choice of people who, on strength of lies, justify mass murder of innocent people and children, that children in Iraq have had their heads chopped off and they've been hung for playing guitar and listening to Western music or playing football, right? That is the horror that this country has delivered to Iraq. The horror that we're witnessing, that this country, with its best friend Israel and USA, has delivered now to Palestine and Syria. And now they want to do the same to Iraq. And now they're provoking Russia into attacking, to doing the same to us for them. Well, I hope Russia spares the British people and finds some way of responding to what Ukraine did with America and British backing. Okay, they bombed Russia's nuclear aircraft, the aircraft that they used to carry nuclear weapons. They bombed them. And those locations were top secret. They were known to the top NATO countries, and Ukraine had none of that intelligence. So the only way it could have known where those planes were is through America or Britain, most likely. And where did they get the weapons from that were powerful enough to destroy that whole fleet? Oh yes, I think they were American weapons. And now Starmer thinks that he's going to save the British economy by just putting all the efforts into producing bombs, right? Is that what you're going to do? Are you British people going to go to work to pay your mortgage to make bombs, right? Because I tell you now, it's a road to nowhere. You might as well just say to your children, don't bother having any kids, lovies, because life isn't really going to be worth living. You might as well say that to them. Are you going to work for your grandchildren's misery? That's what I'm saying. Don't we work and build our lives for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren, our children's happiness, future? Isn't that what the main thing about life is? Producing the next generation, caring for them, loving for them, and building a better life for the future. Where is our better life? We have not had a better life, have we? The majority of the people of Britain have just suffered since Thatcher. All right, she put a few grand in a few people's pockets on strength of selling social housing. Which, why should they have profited it? You know, what happened to the rest of the public that owned that property then? Where's our compensation? And the same with British Gas. Sold off British Gas. We were invited to buy shares in what we already owned. So, you know, the madness has been going on for a very, very long time, and it is time to step out of it. So I do call on the British police and the military to do your jobs and stand by the law and stand by human rights, uphold democracy. You know, the Securities Act 1989, okay? You are supposed to arrest and detain all quidlings, foreign powers controlling our economy and our law and our government and our military. I believe that not one single British soldiers' lives should be lost in Ukraine. I believe Boris Johnson, well, I know that Boris Johnson needs to be arrested for his involvement and stand trial for his involvement in persuading Ukraine to abandon a peace treaty. Let's just fight. What were they fighting for? What were they fighting for? The Donbass that Russia was retaking, that was mostly Russian, the Donbass that government had murdered 22,000 people. The Nazis had murdered those people. No, you've been lied to way, way too much, people, because look, just to give you absolute proof, this is from 2014, okay? Recent events in Ukraine are a warning to the international working class. Under conditions in which workers lack both a perspective and a party to enable them to intervene independently in political events, the situation in Ukraine has developed in an extremely reactionary direction. Now, isn't that exactly what has just happened in Britain? Okay? That now we have no perspective, really, because we've just been told that many lies, everybody's very confused. And we have no political party now to enable us to intervene independently in political events. Because we've got no representation. All we've got are Zionists. That's it. And apparently Farage is heralded to be the next PM. And what's he? A Zionist. So, what had been unthinkable in Europe since the fall of Hitler's Third Reich in 1945 has come to pass, while the US and Germany ruthlessly and recklessly destabilised the country. Fascists became the decisive force on the ground. Okay? And it sparked when President Viktor Yanukovych refused to sign an association agreement with the European Union. And this was unacceptable for Washington and Berlin. You see, Berlin, Germany, protecting its Nazis. Germany going to war with Ukraine. This is how it all started in World War II. They say history repeats. Well, they've orchestrated a repeat and they've done it deliberately. This hasn't just happened by chance. They have a plan. They want their Great Reset. They want to rebuild. They want to demolish everything in Europe and do it with the people still in it because it's cheaper, right? So we are literally fighting for our lives, our very, very lives. And you, people of Britain, you do need to listen to people like me, people on the ground who spend our time and do our research. You need to listen to people like Craig Murray. You need to listen to people like Patrick, I always forget his name, Hannington, I think it is. And for some reason, his post isn't even on my profile anymore, I don't think. Yeah. Sorry, Henningsen. You need to listen to people like him. You need to tune into UK Colin. You need to tune into Brian Christian at Last American Vagabond. Or The Secular Talk. You know, there are many, many news sources that are trustworthy and independent and not really on any political side. You know, people would call me left-wing, but I don't believe in left-wing, right-wing politics. I believe in politicians who stand up for the law and human rights, okay? That's it. If a politician cannot support the law, international law and human rights, then they've got no business standing to be a politician. That's it. If somebody like Keir Starmer can stand there and say, I stand unequivocally with Zionism, if Boris Johnson can say, I am a Zionist, and David Cameron can say, I am a Zionist, and then their parties and their MPs are all supporting evil Zionist actions of genocide and ethnic cleansing, and even while they're saying, oh, it's not genocide. Even if it's not a genocide, they're committing war crimes. And they're standing by them. And you need to remember that, because the people who support war crimes against those people are quite happily support war crimes against us as well. And they are already committing war crimes against us with their economic terrorism and with their censorship of free speech and the right to freedom of expression. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for listening. I think this is a very serious time indeed, and we do all need now to start talking, discussing among ourselves what we want to do, because I feel that what we need to do is literally surround Parliament and just tell them we have no confidence in them. I have no confidence in a gang of terrorists, supporters and terrorists to take this country to war. And I do question the reason why. And I do request that Keir Starmer and all his warmongering cabinet are immediately arrested and investigated. The Hague is coming. Now, you either stand up for it, people. You either stand up for your rights now and chase those crazy ballheads out of our yard, or suffer the consequences forever. God bless the children.